Unrequited love has never sounded so operatic. In this lush adaptation of Andrew Lloyd Webber's musical, Gerard Butler stars as the infamous Phantom, a brooding, cape-swirling musical genius with a thing for drama, chandeliers, and, oh yes, his beautiful protégée Christine, played by Emmy Rossum. But despite all the tortured singing and underground layers, Christine decides that creepy obsession isn't exactly her love language and instead chooses the bland but dependable Raoul, Patrick Wilson. The Phantom, left with a mask and a broken heart. It's gothic, grand, and full of eyeliner, but at the end of the day, the girl says no. Copyright Warner Brothers. If time travel could fix a broken heart, Ashton Kutcher's Evan would be married with kids by now. But the butterfly effect isn't interested in happy endings, it's more of a mess things up in every timeline kind of movie. Every time Evan goes back in time to save his childhood love, Kaylee, played by Amy Smart, he ends up making things worse. Seriously, he tries everything short of rewriting the laws of physics and still ends up solo. It's a dark, trippy ride through alternate realities where the only consistent thing is Evan getting emotionally wrecked. Love hurts, but quantum physics hurts more. Copyright New Line Cinema. This one's a sneaky heartbreaker in disguise. The Last American Virgin starts out like your typical raunchy 80s teen comedy, awkward crushes, bad decisions, and a lot of questionable fashion. But then it pulls the rug out from under you. Our painfully relatable hero, Gary, Lawrence Monason, falls for Karen, Diane Franklin, only to watch her fall for his jerky best friend instead. And after a brief moment of hope, spoiler alert, she still chooses the jerk. Oof, the final shot of Gary driving alone with tears in his eyes? That's pure teenage devastation, funny, honest, and surprisingly cruel. Copyright Canon Group. Tom Hanks is adorable as Josh, the 12-year-old boy who wishes to be big, and suddenly wakes up in a grown man's body. As he navigates adult life with childlike wonder, he somehow lands a dream job, a cool NYC apartment, and yes, a romantic relationship with his coworker Susan, Elizabeth Perkins. But once she finds out he's literally a child, game over. She kisses him goodbye and sends him back to middle school, which, let's be honest, is the only acceptable ending. It's sweet, weird, and a little uncomfortable in retrospect, but the grown-up doesn't get the girl because, well, he was never grown up to begin with. Copyright 20th Century Fox. Kevin Costner and Whitney Houston deliver chemistry hot enough to melt steel in The Bodyguard, but don't let the sparks fool you. This romance is a slow burn to nowhere. Costner plays Frank, a stoic ex-Secret Service agent hired to protect Whitney's pop diva Rachel Marin. Between assassination attempts and powerhouse ballads, yes, that, I Will Always Love You, they fall hard. But in classic tragic yet classy fashion, Frank walks away in the end. Because duty, because danger, because someone had to make the audience cry during the credits. A love that burns bright, then walks into the sunset without a backward glance. Copyright Warner Brothers. In what might be Kevin Smith's most emotionally honest film, and least Jay and Silent Bob-ish, Chasing Amy gives us Ben Affleck as Holden, a comic book artist who falls head over flannel for Alyssa, Joey Lauren Adams, a witty, sharp, and openly gay woman. But Holden can't quite handle her past, her identity, or the fact that the world doesn't revolve around his romantic idealism. Spoiler: Alyssa doesn't give up her truth just to be his girlfriend. It's messy, ahead of its time, and painfully real, with laughs tucked between existential cringe. Love doesn't conquer all, it barely makes it out of the second act. Copyright Miramax Films. Disney, you cruel, cruel heartbreaker. In this darker-than-usual animated outing, Quasimodo, voiced by Tom Hulse, is the bell-ringing, heartstring-tugging outcast who falls for the radiant Esmeralda, voiced by Demi Moore. And even though he's kind, brave, and built like a sad puppy with abs, she ends up with the handsome Captain Phoebus, Kevin Kline. Ouch, it's a rare Disney film where the hero doesn't get the girl. He just gets to smile bravely from a distance while she rides off with someone taller. Still, props to the movie for showing kids that sometimes being a good person is its own reward, but also, ouch. Copyright Walt Disney Pictures. A political drama wrapped in a romance wrapped in 1,000 tissues, The Way We Were pairs Barbara Streisand with peak 70s Robert Redford, all golden hair and emotionally unavailable vibes. She's passionate and fiery, he's laid back and emotionally, not. The opposites attract, then combust, in a romance that can't survive the weight of differing ideals and, let's face it, bad timing. By the end, they're just two beautifully sad people on a New York sidewalk remembering what once was. It's devastating in the best way, and that Streisand theme song? Straight to the tear ducts. Copyright Columbia Pictures. A small indie with a giant emotional punch, Once is the story of two unnamed musicians, played by Glenn Hansard and Marketa Arglova, who meet on the streets of Dublin and create something beautiful, just not a relationship. Their chemistry is off the charts tender, but it never tips into romance. Why? Live, timing, and maybe the quiet grace of letting something be meaningful without needing it to last. The songs are heartbreakingly good, Hello, Falling Slowly, and the whole film feels like a sigh you didn't know you were holding. No grand gesture, just real life and a missed connection that somehow feels perfect. Copyright Fox Searchlight Pictures. In this iconic anti-rom-com, Woody Allen, as neurotic comedian Albie Singer, tells the tale of his love affair with the quirky, free-spirited Annie Hall, played by Diane Keaton in the role that launched 1,000 Neckties. The relationship unfolds in fragments, hilarious, awkward, and painfully relatable, only to ultimately unravel, as these two mismatched souls drift apart. The genius? It doesn't try to give you closure. It just lets love be messy, weird, and ultimately fleeting. A breakup movie that still manages to be romantic, go figure. Also, Diane Keaton's wardrobe is the moment. Copyright United Artists. Only Tom Hanks could make being stuck in an airport for months look both endearing and weirdly noble. In The Terminal, he plays Viktor Navorsky, a sweet, earnest man from a fictional Eastern European country who finds himself stranded in JFK due to a bureaucratic nightmare. Along the way, he meets and falls for flight attendant Amelia, played by the always glamorous Catherine Zeta-Jones. There's charm, there's flirting, there's jazz music, and then there's the gut punch when she ultimately chooses a more realistic love interest. Victor gets freedom, growth, and a jazz legend's autograph, but not the girl. Still, we'd absolutely get stuck in an airport with him. Copyright DreamWorks Pictures. Tom Hanks again, but this time he's got a beard, a loincloth, and a volleyball named Wilson. In Cast Away, he plays Chuck Noland, a FedEx executive who gets marooned on a deserted island after a plane crash. He survives against all odds, clutches our emotions in a death grip, and finally returns home, only to discover that his longtime love, Kelly, Helen Hunt, has moved on. Oof, it's a powerful moment. He did all that only to lose her anyway. The guy survives the ocean, starvation, and profound isolation, but he can't compete with a husband and 2 kids. Sometimes, life just rewrites your story without asking. Copyright 20th Century Fox. Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight is many things: a crime epic, a psychological thriller, and a superhero movie that made you question everything. But it's also a quiet heartbreak machine. Christian Bale's Bruce Wayne still pines for childhood sweetheart Rachel Dawes, played this time by Maggie Gyllenhaal, believing she's the light at the end of his very brooding tunnel. Spoiler alert. She not only chooses someone else, poor Harvey Dent, but she also dies mid-film, leaving Bruce emotionally wrecked and spiritually ghosted. Gotham gets a hero. Bruce gets a trauma flashback. Superhero life. 10 out of 10 would not recommend for romance. Copyright Warner Brothers Pictures. Joaquin Phoenix gives the most heartbreakingly tender mustachioed performance of his life in Her, playing Theodore, a lonely man who falls in love with his AI assistant, Samantha, voiced with sultry digital warmth by Scarlett Johansson. It's futuristic, philosophical, and surprisingly alluring, until Samantha basically breaks up with him because she's evolving beyond human comprehension. Classic. 1 minute she's reading him poetry, the next she's off in the singularity with 641 other conversations happening simultaneously. Love in the digital age is weird, folks, and apparently, not even a soulful Joaquin can compete with quantum computing. Copyright Warner Brothers Pictures. The movie that launched 1,000 debates about who was right, and who was just emotionally immature. Joseph Gordon-Levitt stars as Tom, a greeting card writer and hopeless romantic who falls hard for Summer, played by Zooey Deschanel at her most vintage chic. But, plot twist, this isn't a love story. At least not one with a happy ending. Summer never pretends she's all in, Tom just doesn't want to hear her. When she eventually marries someone else, it's both soul-crushing and weirdly healthy. This movie is a breakup wrapped in whimsy, and we love it for refusing to give us the ending we wanted. Copyright Fox Searchlight Pictures. Set against the dreamy neon haze of Tokyo, Lost in Translation stars Bill Murray as a washed-up actor and Scarlett Johansson as a soul-searching newlywed, both adrift in their own lives. They meet, connect, and quietly unravel each other's loneliness, not with grand gestures, but with whispered moments and shared silences. It's the rare kind of intimacy that doesn't need a kiss to be real, though that almost kiss at the end? Devastating. The famous final scene, where he murmurs something inaudible in her ear before disappearing into the crowd, is pure poetic heartbreak. Love that doesn't end in a relationship? Yeah, that's peak cinema. Copyright Focus Features. Let's be honest, La La Land is one big, dazzling bait and switch. You walk in thinking you're getting a classic Hollywood romance, and instead Damien Chazelle hits you with a technicolor meditation on dreams versus love. Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone sparkle as Sebastian and Mia, two wildly talented, wildly flawed people who fall deeply in love, but just not deeply enough to stay together. The ending montage? A full-blown emotional sucker punch that plays out the life they could have had, complete with jazz clubs and shared glances. Instead, they smile politely and move on. Art 1, Love Lost. Oof. Copyright Summit Entertainment. Wong Kar-wai's masterpiece isn't just a film, it's an extended mood. Tony Leung and Maggie Cheung play neighbors in 1960s Hong Kong who slowly realize their spouses are cheating on them, with each other. As their friendship deepens, so does a quiet, aching attraction, but they're too decent, too wounded, too bound by honor to act on it. There are no love declarations, just stolen glances and moments heavy with what-ifs. And in true Wong Kar-wai fashion, even their final parting is more poetry than plot. It's the most romantic movie where nothing happens, and that's exactly why it hurts so good. Copyright Block 2 Pictures. They don't make him like Casablanca anymore. Humphrey Bogart's Rick is the original emotionally unavailable king, running a nightclub in wartime Morocco and nursing a broken heart. Enter Ingrid Bergman as Ilsa, the woman who walked out on him in Paris and now needs his help escaping with her resistance hero husband. Cue the angst. Cue the trench coats. Cue, here's looking at you, kid. In the end, Rick sends her away for the greater good, because sometimes loving someone means letting them go. It's the gold standard of noble heartbreak, and it still hits like a freight train. Copyright Warner Brothers Pictures. The newest entry on this list might also be the most soul-stirring. Past Lives, directed by Celine Song, tells the story of childhood sweethearts Nora, Greta Lee, and Hae Sung, Tae Yoo, who reconnect decades later in New York. But this isn't a reunion driven by nostalgia. It's a quiet, devastating exploration of what could have been. John Magaro plays Arthur, Nora's husband, watching this slow-burning emotional earthquake with grace and heartbreak. No one's the villain here, which somehow makes it worse. It's a love story that chooses reality over fantasy, and leaves you staring at the ceiling, rethinking your own timeline. Copyright A24.